Jealousy is the only disease that doesn't need a cure. It needs exposure. And trust me, they expose themselves every time they speak. They'll say you're too much. They'll call you lucky. They'll whisper, she thinks she's better than us. Oh honey, I don't think. I know I'm different. Because while they gossip, I grind. While they envy, I elevate. Let them talk. Because every time they do, they remind me I'm doing something right. She changed. That's what they whisper when you walk into a room with your head held high and a peace they can't disturb. But let me tell you something. They don't mean you changed. What they really mean is you grew. And they didn't. You see, growth makes people uncomfortable. Not because you did something wrong, but because you did something they were too afraid to do. You stopped showing up for people who never showed up for you. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit in spaces that never valued you. And now that you're different, they're bitter. But you know what? That's their problem, not yours. You used to answer every call, every text, every cry for help. Even when you were drowning, you kept being the lifeguard for people who wouldn't even throw you a rope. And then one day you realized your time, your peace, your mental health is not a donation box. So you stopped. And they called that change. No, darling, that's called evolution. Remember the time you said no for the first time? You weren't rude. You weren't arrogant. You were finally honest with yourself. And suddenly, the people who once loved your obedience started hating your boundaries. That's not you changing. That's them. Revealing they only loved you when you were easy to use. You started dressing differently, more confident, more bold, more like you. Suddenly they say, she's not the same. But they don't know the nights you cried yourself to sleep feeling invisible. They don't know the hours you spent questioning your worth. So when you finally started seeing beauty in your reflection, it shook them. Because when a woman starts loving herself loudly, it triggers every insecure soul in the room. Your conversations changed. You stopped gossiping, stopped entertaining negativity, stopped hanging out just for the sake of being around people. Now you read books, talk about goals, mindsets, investments, healing, and they say, she's too deep now. That's not depth that bothers them. It's the mirror you became. Because your presence forces them to confront everything they're not doing. In relationships, you stopped begging, stopped chasing, stopped settling for breadcrumbs when you deserve the whole damn bakery. And now they say you've changed because you're not crying over people who don't even check on you. That's not change. That's self-respect finally kicking in. At work, you started speaking up, asking for the raise, applying for the promotion, launching your business. And suddenly, colleagues say you're too ambitious. But weren't you the same person they used to overlook? Now that you're making moves, you're too much. No, sweetheart, you're finally enough for yourself. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped watering dead plants. You stopped giving your energy to things that don't grow you. And when you did, they said, you're not the same. They're right. You better. Growth is silent, but its impact is loud. And the loudest reaction always comes from the ones who didn't expect you to rise. They thought you'd stay broken, stay needy, stay lost. But baby, you learned how to build while bleeding. You learned how to rise while hurting. That's not change. That's rebirth. So let them talk. Let them point. Let them say she changed. Because every time they say it, what they're really saying is, she became everything I was too afraid to be. She got lucky. That's what they'll say when you finally have what you prayed, cried, and bled for. When you walk into the room glowing with peace, carrying success on your shoulders like it was handed to you. But they didn't see the nights you were curled up, battling with yourself just to make it to the next day. Luck? No, that wasn't luck. That was you sacrificing sleep, showing up when no one clapped, grinding in silence while others partied. That was you choosing discipline over distractions, faith over fear, and purpose over popularity. But because they didn't see the grind, they dismiss it as a gift. Because admitting your strength would expose their laziness. So, this is what the scripture says. There is only peace when people know that grind doesn't dismiss it over description. They had to face the grind because admitting your strength would expose they saw you get the promotion, but they didn't see you arriving early and leaving late for months while juggling anxiety and a broken heart. They didn't see you Googling how to believe in yourself at 2 a.m. They didn't witness the times you ate instant noodles just to save for a dream. But now that your life looks like a movie, they say you got lucky. No, baby, this isn't luck. This is proof that pain pays off when you refuse to quit. You started your own business, and now you're flourishing. But no one saw you packing orders on your kitchen floor, crying over failed launches, doubting your idea 100 times. They didn't see your bank account hit 0 while your faith had to be 100. But now that your brand is booming and your name is being mentioned in rooms you haven't even stepped into, they label it luck. Because saying you earned it would force them to face what they never started. You found love again. Pure, healthy, respectful love. And what did they say? She got lucky. As if love just landed on your lap. As if they knew how many toxic people you had to walk away from. How many times you had to choose solitude over settling. They don't know that before you found someone who saw your worth, you had to learn to see it yourself. That's not luck, that's alignment. That's healing. That's divine timing meeting preparation. You're glowing, you're fit, you're mentally stable, and they think, she's just naturally like that. But where were they when you were dragging yourself to the gym with tears in your eyes or journaling every night trying to silence your inner critic? Where were they when you turned off your phone for a week just to protect your peace? They don't know that peace is expensive, and you paid for it with people, habits, and comfort zones. You started creating content, and one video went viral. Suddenly everyone says, oh, she got lucky. But they didn't see the 87 videos before that where you got 2 likes and 0 comments. They didn't witness the self-doubt, the hate comments, the temptation to quit. They didn't see the version of you that almost gave up because it felt pointless. But you didn't stop. You kept showing up. And consistency always looks like luck to people who quit early. You're driving a better car now, living in a nicer place, and people are whispering, she must have had help. Yes, help from God, help from grace, but also help from your own damn grind. You helped yourself when no one else did. You motivated yourself when everyone else doubted you. That's not luck. That's resilience, wearing high heels and walking with confidence. They will always reduce what they don't understand. They'll say luck, because saying hard work would mean accepting that you did what they wouldn't. They didn't see you climb, so they assume you were dropped at the top. But every step you took, every fall you survived, every door you knocked on was a war you won in silence. She's so full of herself. That's what they say now, that you finally walk like you own the room. Not because you think you're better than anyone else, but because you finally stop thinking you're less. You speak your mind now, not to hurt, not to impress, but because your silence used to suffocate you. You sat in rooms biting your tongue, letting people walk over your ideas, letting others decide your worth, but not anymore. Now when something's wrong, you say it. When something's brilliant, you own it. You don't need permission to exist. You don't wait for applause to validate your truth. And that kind of power, it rattles the insecure. Remember when you posted your first confident selfie and felt guilty about it? Afraid people would call you vain? But you posted it anyway, because for once you felt beautiful without needing someone to say it first. Now you post without overthinking. Not for likes, not for attention, but because you're no longer waiting for someone else to see your worth before you do. And suddenly, you're too much. No, darling, you were just too quiet before. At work, you used to play small so others could feel big. You'd do the hard work and let someone else take the credit. You'd shrink in meetings and call it being humble. But humility doesn't mean you hide your light. Now you speak with clarity. You own your ideas. You correct people who try to overlook you. And those who once benefited from your silence now call you cocky. But they never said that when a man did the same. Funny, isn't it? You laugh loudly now. You dance like no one's watching, even if they are. You stopped trying to be perfect and started being real. And when someone compliments you, you say thank you instead of deflecting it with a joke or a no, I'm not. That's not ego, that's healing. That's what it looks like when a woman finally falls in love with herself after a lifetime of betrayal, comparison. They'll say you think you're better than everyone, but what they're really feeling is that you no longer need their approval. That scares people. When you stop playing the role of the humble girl who never outshines, they don't know what to do with you. You disrupt their expectations. You outgrow the box they built for you. You become a mirror, and the reflection is uncomfortable. Confidence is threatening when it comes from a woman who used to be silent. But don't let that shake you. Don't lower your voice so someone else can feel tall. The people who say, she's so full of herself, are just mad you're no longer empty enough to please them. She thinks she's better than everyone. That's the accusation they throw when you stop playing small. When you raise your standards, cut off dead energy and start saying no to what doesn't grow you, they say you're acting superior. But the truth is, you're just done settling for crumbs when you know you were born to feast. You're not walking around claiming to be above anyone. You're just refusing to sit at tables where respect isn't served. And that makes some people uncomfortable. Because when you stop tolerating mediocrity, those who live in it feel exposed. When you no longer bend backwards just to be liked, they call you arrogant. But they never said that when you were silent, broken, and tolerating what drained you, you left a job where they underpaid and overworked you. Now you're building something of your own. And what do they say? She thinks she's too good for a 9 to 5. No, you just realized that your potential doesn't belong in a box. You were tired of giving 100% to a place that gave you 10% back. You didn't walk away because you're better. There's a difference, but they'll never admit that. You stopped dating people who love inconsistently, who disappear when things get hard, who only want you when you're convenient. And they said, she's so picky. She thinks no one is good enough. No, You just stopped calling emotional crumbs a buffet. You've cried enough over bare minimum. You've begged enough to be chosen. Now you choose yourself. You'd rather be alone in peace than tangled in chaos. And because you won't settle, they say, you've changed. Of course you have. You healed. At family gatherings, you speak with intention. You don't gossip, you don't entertain small talk, and you don't stay in toxic traditions just because that's how it's always been. Now they say you've become distant, that you're too proud, but you're just protecting your energy. You're not available for generational pain masked as loyalty. You're not playing along just to keep peace while your soul suffers. And to the ones who still choose chaos over clarity, your boundaries look like ego. You started taking care of your body, your mind, your goals. You no longer waste weekends drinking away your dreams just to fit in. You stop going to every event, saying yes to every plan or answering every call. You're selective now, not because you think you're better, but because you finally understand your time is sacred. But of course, they say she's acting brand new. Yes, you are. Because the old version of you kept saying yes while dying inside. This version, she knows how to say no and sleep peacefully. You speak vision now. You talk about building, healing, leveling up. And those stuck in cycles feel threatened. They say, she thinks she's perfect, but you're not trying to be perfect. You're just trying to evolve. And in a room full of people who fear change, evolution feels like insult. They don't hate you. They hate the mirror you've become. When you refuse to stay stuck in the same place, it forces them to question why they've been standing still for so long. Your silence, your standards, your growth, it's loud to people who knew the old you. The one who used to shrink, settle, and sacrifice herself just to be accepted. But you're not doing that anymore. You've outgrown fake friendships, one-sided relationships, and environments that glorified burnout. You go outside and a step further. And to the people still living in survival mode, your peace looks like pride. So they'll keep whispering, she thinks she's better than us. But deep down, they know. You just finally decided to stop pretending you're less. You didn't rise to shame anyone. You rose because your spirit was suffocating. You didn't evolve to look down on people. You evolved because staying low was destroying your soul. She's acting different. That's what they say when you finally stop letting people walk all over you. When you stop picking up calls that drain your energy. When you start saying no without guilt. When you choose peace over people pleasing. That's when they say, you've changed. But what they really mean is, you've set boundaries. And they don't know how to manipulate you anymore. You used to be the one who always said yes. Yes to extra favors. Yes to last-minute plans. Yes to emotional dumping at midnight. Even when you were exhausted. Even when your soul was screaming for rest. Because you thought love meant being endlessly available. But not anymore. Now you say, I can't right now. Now you say, that doesn't work for me. And suddenly, you're acting different. But the truth is, you're just finally choosing you. Remember those friends who only showed up when they needed something? When you were the free therapist, the emergency contact, the emotional crutch. But the moment you needed them, silence. And yet you kept showing up, hoping one day they'd show up too. But one day you woke up and realized your worth is not in how much you're used, it's in how much you're valued. So you stepped back, You stopped chasing one-sided connections. And that's when they said, she's distant now. She's different. Yes. Because peace looks different on you. You don't explain yourself like you used to. You don't write long paragraphs justifying your choices. You don't beg people to understand your side of the story. Because you've learned. People who care don't need explanations, and people who demand them just want control. You stop feeling guilty for outgrowing people who didn't grow with you. And when you move in silence, they mistook it for attitude. No. It's not attitude. It's alignment. At work, you no longer let others dump their responsibilities on you. You used to take it all, afraid to say no, afraid to seem difficult, but it broke you. And now, when someone tries to overstep, you stand your ground. You say, this is not part of my role. You protect your time, your effort, your energy, and what happens? They whisper, she's not as helpful as she used to be. Because boundaries look like rebellion to people who only respected you when you were tired and obedient. Family members don't get a free pass either. Just because someone's related to you doesn't mean they have the right to drain you. You stopped showing up for toxic conversations and guilt trips disguised as love. You started keeping your distance, choosing silence over chaos. And suddenly they say you're cold or disrespectful. But you're just done confusing loyalty with self-sacrifice. You still love them. You're just not losing yourself for them anymore. You don't tolerate passive-aggressive jokes that are really just disguised insults. You don't sit in rooms that make you question your worth. You don't stay in friendships where you feel like a backup option. You speak up, you step away. You protect your peace like it's your paycheck. Because it is. It pays you in clarity, health, freedom. They say you're not the same anymore. They're right. The girl who kept quiet to avoid conflict, who overgave to feel needed, who said yes out of fear of abandonment, she doesn't live here anymore. In her place stands a woman who knows her limits, who doesn't trade her soul for temporary validation, who walks away not to hurt, but to heal. You're not acting different to be rude. You're acting different because you're finally respecting your inner self. You've realized that people who truly love you will honor your boundaries, not resent them. And those who get angry at your growth were only benefiting from your lack of it. So let them say you've changed. Let them gossip, distance, question. Because setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's what happens when you finally understand that your time, your energy, your heart, they're not free for anyone to misuse. She's too much. That's what they say. When your fire burns brighter than their comfort zone. When you walk into a room and own your space without apology. When your voice isn't trembling anymore. When your dreams are no longer hidden under the carpet of modesty. You don't shrink, you don't soften your truth to soothe their insecurity. So they label you as too much, but what they're really saying is, you're more than they can handle. You have passion in your eyes, purpose in your steps, and a mouth that speaks truth even when it shakes the room. You're not afraid to speak up in meetings anymore. You offer bold ideas. You take initiative. You demand excellence. Not just from others, but from yourself. And instead of applauding your leadership, they whisper, she's aggressive. She's intense. No, you're just clear. Clear about your worth, your voice, and your mission. And your clarity feels like chaos to people who have never dared to be fully seen. You love hard, you care deep, and when you give, whether it's in a relationship, friendship, or your career, you go all in. You're not half-hearted. And that scares people who only know how to exist in halves. When you show up with all your layers, your confidence, your emotions, your expectations, they get overwhelmed. They say, she's too emotional, too opinionated, too loud. But you're not too anything. You're just whole. And they were only prepared for fragments. You've stopped laughing at jokes that aren't funny. Stop staying silent to keep the peace. Stop dumbing yourself down just to make others feel smart. And when you stop performing, the audience got uncomfortable. Suddenly you're not the nice girl anymore. You're too much. But the truth is, they were only comfortable when you were muted, when you were digestible. Now that you're raw and real, they can't figure out how to swallow your truth. You walk in heels they couldn't carry. You juggle dreams they wouldn't dare chase. You cry when it hurts and rise when it's heavy. You're not pretending to be perfect. You're just unwilling to be small anymore. And your unapologetic existence makes people squirm. Because you remind them of the parts of themselves they've abandoned. So they say she's dramatic when you simply refuse to suffer in silence. They say she's over the top when you simply refuse to suffer in silence. They say she's over the top when you simply refuse to suffer in silence. You want more than average love, more than halfway loyalty, more than occasional effort. And they tell you your standards are too high, that you expect too much. But what they really mean is, they're not ready to rise to what you deserve. They can't keep up with the way you love, the way you dream, the way you heal. So instead of rising, they retreat. Instead of growing, they criticize. Because tearing you down is easier than leveling up to meet you. Even in friendships, they say she's always talking about growth, always reading, always changing. Yes, because you refuse to be stuck. You refuse to be stagnant. You're evolving, and they're still spinning in circles. Your hunger for more, for better, for depth, it's intimidating to people who've made comfort their identity. And instead of saying, I'm inspired, they say you've become too much. But you weren't born to be digestible, you were born to be a force. And if your intensity burns the eyes of those too used to dim light, that's not your problem. That's their invitation to evolve or exit. Because you're not lowering your volume anymore. Not your voice, not your standards, not your dreams. Let them say you're too much. That just means you've outgrown the room they're still hiding in. They called you too much, but here you are, still rising, still glowing, still breaking ceilings they couldn't even reach. You were never too much. You were always just enough for the life you were destined to live. And maybe that life looked too big, too bold, too unstoppable for small minds trapped in average expectations. But you were never built for average. You were carved from fire and grace, from chaos and clarity. And no matter how many times they tried to dim you, shrink you, tame you, you refused. You chose to be the storm. Let them call you intense. Let them say you dream too big, feel too deep, expect too much. Because, darling, you are not here to fit in. You are here to take up space. Space in rooms they said weren't made for you. Space in hearts that forgot what real love looks like. Space in conversations where silence used to swallow your truth. You think the lion cares about the opinion of sheep? No. Because the lion was never made to seek approval. It was made to own the jungle. So don't fold just because someone else is intimidated by your roar. Your power is not a threat. Your glow is not arrogance. It's alignment. It's what happens when a woman finally walks in the fullness of who she is. No edits, no filters, just raw, fearless truth. They will say your confidence is cocky. They'll call your boundaries attitude. They'll label your ambition greed. But remember this: those who are intimidated by your light will always try to shade it with lies. That's not your burden to carry. Your job isn't to make them comfortable. Your job is to stay lit, to stay loud, to stay limitless. You know what's really too much? Settling, shrinking, silencing your own soul to make insecure people feel safe. You were not born to be liked. You were born to be legendary, to leave a legacy that echoes long after you've left the room, to walk with a spine of steel and a heart of gold. You were made for impact, not invisibility. Yes, you're loud. So was every revolution. Yes, you're bold. So is every game changer. Yes, you take up space. So do stars in the sky. And no one tells them to dim. So why should you? If people think you're too much, let them choke on your greatness. Let them feel your energy before you even speak. Because your presence is power. And your presence doesn't ask permission. It commands attention. You are not background music. You are the anthem. And when the world tries to mute your melody, remind yourself of this: you didn't come this far to be quiet. You didn't rise from the ashes just to fit in. You were the fire that forged your own crown. And if they think you're too much, it's because they've never met someone who finally stopped pretending to be less. Speak like you own your truth. Walk like you carry purpose in your bones. Love like it's your superpower. Stand tall, even if you're standing alone. Because being too much means you finally stop begging for crumbs in rooms you were meant to redesign. Let them talk. Let them judge. Let them misunderstand. That's the price of elevation. That's the tax on greatness. But you keep rising. You keep building. You keep showing up like you are the answer to a prayer someone else is too afraid to pray. You are not too emotional, too loud, too picky, too ambitious. You are exactly the right amount of power this world needs. So next time they call you too much, smile and say, "Darling, you haven't seen anything yet."